Arizona Senator Jeff Flake announcing on the Senate floor today he will not be running for re-election in 2018. So what does that mean with him vacating the seat? Part of his reasoning, he cited the current political climate.
It was a scathing speech today. The senator took aim at President Trump, calling him reckless and outrageous with a flagrant disregard for truth and decency. He even criticized the Republican Party for no longer believing in its core principles.
Senator Flake also warned that the current impulse to scapegoat and belittle people could turn the nation into fearful, backward-looking people.
I decided that I would be better able to represent the people of Arizona and to better serve my country and my conscience by freeing myself of the political consideration that consumed far too much bandwidth and would cause me to compromise far too many principles. To that end, I am announcing today that my service in the Senate will conclude at the end of my term in early January 2019. The reckless provocations, most often for the pettiest and most personal reasons having nothing whatsoever to do with the fortunes of the people that we have been elected to serve. None of these appalling features of our current politics should ever be regarded as normal.
Senator John McCain also spoke on the Senate floor about his time serving with Flake, calling it one of the great honors of his life. Also taking to Twitter to say thank you to my dear friend for your honorable service to the state and the nation.
And Governor Ducey also thanked Senator Flake on Twitter for his nearly 2 decades in the House and the Senate.
And former Congresswoman Gabby Gifford saying, "Don't worry, take it from me. This is a great opportunity for service after Congress. Good luck."
Team 12's Bram Resnick is in the Live Alert Center now with more on Flake's big decision.
2 years ago, Senator Jeff Flake was all alone when he took on candidate Donald Trump. Today, Flake walked away from the Senate, declaring that President Trump left him no choice.
Senator Jeff Flake was the future president's harshest and, for a long time, only Republican critic in Congress. In December 2015, on the eve of the Republican primaries, Flake and his family attended a prayer service at a Scottsdale mosque. It was a direct rebuke of Donald Trump's rhetoric against Muslims. A few months later, Flake told Trump to his face to stop attacking Mexicans. Trump threatened to attack Flake. Then came Flake's book in June, Conscience of a Conservative. It portrayed Trump as unfit for the White House. By then, Trump was already recruiting a candidate to run against Flake next year. The Arizona Republican Party's conservative base gives the president 70% approval ratings. As an immigration reformer, Flake's never been trusted by the base. So it's no surprise that Flake finds himself down 20 points in the polls to former state legislator Kelly Ward. Ward now has the blessing of President Trump's former political advisor, Steve Bannon.
If I have been critical, it is not because I relish criticizing the behavior of the President of the United States. If I have been critical, it is because I believe it is my obligation to do so.
The irony here is Senator Flake votes with President Trump 92% of the time. White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders said Flake was, quote, doing the right thing by dropping out.
And Bram, how surprised were you by the announcement? And do you think that it was purely a political decision because of how far behind he was in the latest polling numbers?
Jeff Flake has been campaigning actively. He had a huge fundraiser last week with Condoleezza Rice, and that was the message he was giving off. I'm told he told advisors just a few hours before the announcement that he was going ahead and doing this. So, big surprise, and yet we've become so accustomed to surprises. As for why he did it, you have to take the man at his word. This was clearly a matter of deep conscience, personal conscience to him, and deep principle, and he just could not stand for this anymore. Mark?
Bram, do you get the impression that with the book he released this summer, he was truly trying to perhaps create a new movement in the Republican Party that would go against the president here, and that it just hasn't quite panned out the way maybe he had hoped?
That's a good question. I don't know if Jeff Flake was trying to create a movement. Jeff Flake, for as long as he served in Congress, in both the House and the Senate, has been known as kind of a party of one. He's always been alone. So the idea of him creating a movement is really not something Jeff Flake has done. However, I think he does want to be a kind of beacon to the rest of the party and hope they follow along. So far, he's got Bob Corker on his side, the Tennessee senator who's also retiring, and I guess that's the movement right now.
Although it is kind of interesting, I was reading an article today that pointed out that both Flake and Corker are stepping down, and only once they make the decision to step away do they rail against the president and the current state of the GOP.
Well, what does that tell you? You know, let's not forget you had this very unusual situation here, almost unprecedented, of a Republican president trying to take out a sitting Republican senator. That just doesn't happen. You know, it speaks to a lot of what Flake was talking about in his farewell speech, his retirement speech. But that just doesn't happen, and it tells you why other Republicans are reluctant to do so. It worked with Bob Corker, and it's worked with Jeff Flake, meaning Donald Trump got his way.
Yeah, it can be political suicide to go up against this president.
That's the definite message of what Jeff Flake told folks, his fellow politicians, today.
Well, now maybe perhaps, you know, you could kind of say they could release the dam.
Yeah.
You know, others could kind of walk the same line. So we'll have to wait and see. And we'll have to wait and see what President Trump says to all of this happening too. Ram, thank you so much.